If you're relying 100% on advertising, you are doing yourself a disservice because there's so many other ways to make money.
Hey, I'm Fred.
And I'm Ant.
And this is Create a Generation.
Create a generation of hype.
How do I make money as a YouTuber? It's a big question, gets asked a lot. And in this video, we're going to help you understand how some of the top YouTubers diversify their revenue and make money on the platform, including insights from Vsauce and the Internet Historian. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I've certainly got videos that have been demonetized. When the channel first started growing in those first sort of 3 months, everything was growing really quickly, and it was like, oh, fantastic. And then the adpocalypse happened, and it was like all of this could be taken away in a moment. And in terms of revenue, most of it was. And so I created a Patreon page, and then I realized, and then that carried on for a while, and while I wasn't releasing videos, so you might have like a 4-week gap between videos, the Patreon helped enormously with that. Initially, it was just to combat, the AdSense problem, but it ended up helping with that. And then more recently, it was like a whole bunch of when the second adpocalypse happened, I realized, the whole channel could just get demonetized for no reason. Essentially, that's what was happening to channels much larger than mine. By necessity, I had to diversify a lot of revenue streams, so it doesn't affect me as much if I've produced something for a long time and then the thing gets demonetized. There are certain practices that you take when you're making a video to avoid demonetization, if that's sort of what you mean. Particular words are going to get caught up, especially political things. So you just try to avoid those words where you can. Anything that's going to have like a sort of graphic nature to it, I try to work around that. And one thing that YouTube specifically has talked about is in the first 30 seconds, try to keep your content fairly mild. So I try to do that as well. And again, it's funny, the limitations end up helping you a lot, because it's like, all right, well, that means that pretty much all of my videos are going to want to start with some form of like cinematic introduction, because I can't leap into like the normal jokes in the first 30 seconds, because that's not going to work. So, okay, the Fall of 76 video, for example, all right, well, we'll start as though we're playing the game Fallout 3, and we're visiting the Bethesda ruins. Okay. And it's just sort of it's all sort of born out of necessity.
But there are a lot of other ways that kids brands can make revenue too. So if you've got a toy channel, for instance, affiliate linking is still a big thing. If you're advertising a product, and then you can link through to that on Amazon. But there's also, if you do music like we do, live shows, there's a lot of kids brands that are doing live shows, live touring. There's licensing, so of videos to other platforms. People will buy videos when it's a kid's video, because unlike adult content, as I said before, they like to rewatch it, right? So if I need my video to watch that kid every day because they love it, and then we're going on a plane, I need to buy that video to download. So, there's a market there for that. There's apps as well. A lot of kids brands have designed apps around their content. There's licensing the IP, which is the traditional kids media model. So most broadcast kids IPs, the model there is you make a show. I'm talking, Thomas the Tank Engine, Peppa Pig, whatever it happens to be. You make the show, and the broadcaster will give you a relatively small amount to put it on their station. But then the way that you make revenue from that audience is through licensing and merch. So then your character, Peppa Pig, appears on a T-shirt in Target, and that's where the revenue is generated. It's not actually generated from the content itself. It's from the licensing of the IP for merch. That hasn't translated quite as well over into digital online brands yet, partly because the licensing industry is such a high-risk industry. If there's only going to be 10 shirts on the shelf at Target for kids, and so if you're the buyer and you have to pick the 10 IPs that are going to go on those shirt, are you going to choose Frozen or are you going to choose Cocomelon, which is, the biggest kids brand on YouTube? And you might choose Cocomelon these days, but previously you would always choose Frozen.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing battle, finding that balance of maintaining monetization and not going too far beyond the community guidelines, the advertising guidelines. I think we've hit a pretty comfortable rhythm. I think some channels in the space want to go that little bit more extreme for the, the titillating effect, I guess, like to bring people in with the gore and the sensationalism of it all. Where we just bring it back a notch and go a little more family friendly to get a wider audience into it and to fit within those guidelines, because it can be very, very hard. Occasionally we'll get something demonetized, and then upon review, you can submit it and someone reviews it and they say, upon review, no, there'll be no ads running on this video. And it can be very frustrating, particularly when we think we've hit all the right, boxes, and we don't think it goes too far and we don't get that feedback. It can be a little frustrating. So it's just a constant thing that we're balancing. Yeah, because like you said, a lot of people don't understand how the game works. A lot of people think I'm just on the dole or something, on Centrelink, they look at me and they're like, do you make money out of what you do? Like, real suspiciously.
Yeah, like homeless people giving you money. Here you go, buddy. It's okay. You're okay.
And like, even like distant family will be like, so what is, what do you do? Like, and how do you make, and I explain it, and then they still don't quite get it. So yeah, I mean, ad revenue is a massive part of what we do. Still, like maybe 90% of our nest egg is ad revenue, which I'm very aware of. All our eggs are in that basket at this stage. So we're looking to diversify more in terms of like, different ways on YouTube that we can make money. Super chats. We're going to launch memberships in the next couple of weeks. We're already on Patreon, which we don't push to all that much. So we just get kind of a gentle trickle of people who want to, really strong fans that want to, support what we do. They'll get involved with Patreon and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's a fine balance. And like you said, it's a mix of entrepreneurial skills, which I love, which really resonates with me. I have to work for myself, and that's something I've just realized recently. I really resonate as being an entrepreneur. My early 20s, I got fired from pretty much every job I've ever had, and I thought I was a bit of a doofus, I was like, what's going on here? Like most of my friends, they have their office jobs and they go and do their 9 to 5 and that, and I just thought maybe something was wrong, but then I figured out that maybe there is something wrong. But I figured out I had to steer my own ship, I had to be my own sort of captain, so to speak. So I really resonate with just running my own business these days. And it has to be that way now. I've tasted that entrepreneurial, being on your own steam. And yeah, I love it.
You see people that talk about, when you do take a sponsorship and you sort of sell a piece of your soul, even if it's a genuine sponsorship that something you believe in, and I would take it if it's something I actually believe in.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like every time you take a sponsorship, you're sort of eroding your credibility a little bit, and that only lasts short term. But if you keep your credibility long term, I think you do build something that's more valuable than trying to make a quick buck.
It's a couple of different things, because in part it's find a good manager or find a good manager and agent if you're big enough that they're interested in working with you, who can help shape your career. Don't be part of their network, but do, the 10% or 15% or whatever agents and managers take. And because the monetization side back in the early days of online video was primarily advertising, it was very much of an advertising model where it's like a CPM, you get $20 for every 1,000 views, and then this person takes this piece. But now that there is a very diverse monetization landscape, so yes, advertising is a piece of it, but if you're relying 100% on advertising, you are doing yourself a disservice because there's so many other ways to make money, from touring. We see a lot of creators touring these days, to books. Last time I saw you guys, I was in Melbourne in November, and Georgia Productions was actually in town. I didn't even know. It was like I landed on Sunday night, and early in the day she'd been at somewhere in Melbourne, doing a book thing, and all these people were there. I was like, that's so awesome. There's Patreon, which is there are many other ways to make money as a creator, and having somebody to help you with that and manage that can be a really, really good thing.
The biggest thing is I'm running a business. So my business relies on people who are reliable, people that have pride in their work, people that produce amazing work, and do what they say they're going to do. So a great creator for me comes with the lens that I make promises to brands, and not just any brand. We work with the top tier brands in the world, and when I make a promise to them, I want to make sure that I'm working with people who will help me uphold that promise. So a great creator is somebody that has that business professionalism and does what they say they're going to do. So I liken being a creator to running your own business. So as a creator, you've got to think of a lot of different things. It's not actually just about creating content. It is about running a business. So it is about reaching out to brands for collaboration opportunities. It is thinking about managing social media platforms. It is developing a website. There are all of these skills. You might be figuring out graphic design to, create a new picture for your website or something. You might be, then you've got to deal with invoicing brands when you get to that stage. So it is running a business, and that's really tough. And especially when you're a solopreneur or a creator, you've got to learn all of those different things. And, that takes work, especially if it's a side hustle, if you're doing a full-time job and trying to figure out all of those things after hours. If you've got a family and you're trying to figure out those things, it's pretty difficult to balance everything. Yeah, I think there's two approaches, authenticity to self and authenticity to audience. So as a creator, I think, we touched on earlier how running a business is hard work. So as a creator, you want to do stuff that sets your soul on fire. You don't want, if you're like a foodie and you love food, you don't want to be, promoting a plant brand. I say, there's a plant next to me, so that's what I reached for.
It's a plastic plant too.
It's a plastic plant. Oh my God, it's outrageous. You don't want to be promoting a brand that you don't love, that isn't going to be something that you're excited to get up every day and talk about. So I think it's important to figure out what you love and what you want to promote, because it comes across in content as well. Like we see influencers or creators who take jobs that it might be for the money, and you can see the lack of passion in the content they produce, and that's not a great scenario because it means they won't get used again. People look at that, whether it be the brand, whether it be the agency that's engaged them. Everyone wants the best result. So if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to do your best work. So I think it's important to understand what you love and what you want to get up every day and create. And then I think it's really important to understand your audience. So your audience will have a demographic profile. They will engage with you on their content, on your comments or in your blog or whatever it might be. It is so important to figure out who they are and what they care about, so that you can also incorporate products, brands, content that they're going to love, because that over time is what's going to build the following and engagement and keep people raving fans. When you see an Instagram feed that is product placement, that is now one of the key measures of influencer selection for brands. So influencers or creators get manually vetted on how many products they're promoting versus how many organic posts they have. So that actually rules creators out before they even get a look in the campaign. So if you're doing that and not putting a focus on organic content creation that is just designed for you and your audience, you'll be cutting yourself out of work before you even start.
Interesting.
So is there have you guys got any guidelines on how many brands that a creator should be working with? Too many, too little? Probably too many?
Yeah, no, I guess there's no hard and fast rule, and it also depends on how much content you post. So if you only post a couple of times a week, you don't want to be working with a couple of brands a week. You know, you may be only wanting to work with a couple of brands a month, because that's going to fit in really authentically with the content that you put out there. If you're producing content every day, if you're, live on stories every day, if you're pushing out a ton of content, you can work with more brands, because it makes sense, because you're talking more and more about your day and what you're doing, and it's easier to slot them in and have it feel authentic. So then we tend to say, you can work with a brand a week, and that's not a problem.
So to approach a brand, what does a creator need to know about themselves and about the brand? And what do they need to do to approach a brand?
Yeah, so the biggest thing they need to know is who their audience is, both themselves and the brand. Because if there's no alignment, there's no way a brand is going to say yes. I guess the caveat to that is if it was only content creation, if you just created beautiful content and you wanted to sell a bank of content to a brand, that might be a different story. But if you want to be a brand ambassador, if you want a sponsored post, if you want to create a sponsored video, you need to understand your audience, and it needs to be the same audience as the brand. It needs to be relevant. So having that data on your own audience is super critical. And having that data on the brand's audience is super critical as well. And you can...
How do you figure out a brand's audience though? Like, I'm a creator, I don't know anything about, they're not going to give me their metrics.
No, they're not going to give you your metrics, but you can make some assumptions. So if you are approaching a lipstick brand, you can look at a brand's advertising, you can look at a brand's social media feed and look at the types of people that they currently work with, look at the types of models they use in their advertising campaign, and make a rough selection on what type of customer they're trying to target. And if you are a guy that talks about food every day, you probably don't want to approach that lipstick brand. You probably don't have females aged 25 to 34 in your demographic. So you can make some assumptions as a creator by looking at their content and looking at the other influencers or other creators that they're already working with.
And when it comes to brands, how do they try and figure out who to work with? What is their sort of matrix of okay, I'm going to work with this creator, or this one's going to be better for me than this one? Because, we see a lot of brands put a lot of content with creators that sometimes doesn't seem to fit, especially when you look at gaming and that kind of thing. It seems odd where they're placing their ads.
Yeah, and I think that the market is still fairly immature. I know that, we've been talking about influencer marketing for a few years, but there are still brands that are completely dabbling in it and just working with anyone and everyone and trying to figure it out. The biggest thing that we're seeing and the biggest move in the industry is this audience understanding. So really, as a brand, figuring out who they're trying to target and making sure that the influencers align to that target first. That's a very romantic way of looking at content creation and creativity, but that's kind of the first make or break. So does that creator have the audience that we're looking to reach? If they do, then they start going into, okay, cool. What does their content look like? Are they the right image for our brand? What have they posted? Who else have they worked with? Do they swear? Do they drink a lot on their feed? All then the sort of more soft objective things. But if you don't have the right data, brands are starting to err away from the get-go.
What does a great pitch to a brand look like?
Can I tell you what it doesn't look like first?
Yes, please.
So if you are contacting a brand and you've found their amazing Instagram profile or social media profile, don't slide into their DMs and say, hey, want to collab? I can't believe it. This example keeps coming up again and again. It literally just came up this week of someone doing that. And it's just, you do have to think about yourself as a business. And as a business owner, you would never reach out to someone, you wouldn't say that to someone in person. So you don't say that on social media. So what a good pitch looks like email is actually great. If you can email someone first over DMing a brand, that is definitely the recommendation. You've got to remember that you're not dealing with another, say, creator who is social first. You're dealing with a brand marketing manager, and they are sitting in front of their computer every day looking at their email inbox. So that's where you want to be. You need to understand that audience relevancy. So it's really the why. Why, as a creator, would that brand want to work with you? And the key things will be the audience, so the alignment and how relevant and exciting your audience would find it to find out more information about this brand, and then the value you can provide in terms of content creation. You know, you might even do a bit more research and find out how often they actually post on their social media profiles. Hey, I noticed you're only posting once a week. Is that because you don't have an amazing bank of content? Let me help you create that. You know, not only is my audience relevant and would love to hear about your brand, but I can actually value add here and make your life easier, Mr. Marketing Manager or Mrs. Social Media Manager, and supply that content. So I think it's really about understanding your why, which is audience, and your value. You know, how can you make their life easier?
Yeah, we got a few good ones. The ones that I really like, there's one about 2 years ago, which Royal Caribbean Cruises sponsored Kevin to film the solar eclipse that was, the point of totality was over the United States. This is super rare, you know, it was a once-in-a-generation kind of thing. And they'd made a cruise that would be directly under the point of totality in the ocean. That was how they sold the cruise. Like, you go on this cruise, we make a big thing out of it. They had Bonnie Tyler and Joe Jonas sing Total Eclipse of the Heart as this was happening. I mean, it was a big production, right? So Kevin had to make a video on that, and he gave a couple really good talks to the ocean goers, you know, on the ship. So, yeah, we only had one shot at that, and it was awesome for me because Eric Langley is a fantastic VFX guy and beautiful cinematographer. He had to shoot Kevin with this eclipse. You know, you have to have a special lens to capture the sun, so that was one thing. Obviously, you only get one shot at this, and it's a fleeting thing, okay? Those poor guys were so stressed out, and I had nothing to do. So, like, I had no role in this at all, and it was amazing because somebody had to, like, hang out properly. So, like, I'm in the VIP area with you know, like, Bonnie Tyler and Joe Jonas and the others. It's this little roped off thing about the size of this room. And so it was awesome. You know, and I'm like sipping champagne and looking over, and Kevin and Eric are just stressed out to the max. They look like they want to die, and the eclipse is kind of happening. I'm like, oh, so happy that I'm not responsible for this one. That was really cool, and it was a great video. This year has been awesome. We did a thing with the U.S. Navy where Kevin played Battleship inside a nuclear submarine with one of the Navy's nuclear technicians.
Create a generation of hype.